Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. My name is Paul Strangini. It is a beautiful morning here in rural northwest Illinois. We left off at the end of chapter 1 yesterday. Chapter 1 of Titus. And I remember I felt like I didn't get to treat it with as much time, I suppose, as I would have liked, because the verse is kind of self-explanatory and the examples abound. I mean, in life you can find, and you should expect, false teachers, people who profess to know God. Notice it doesn't say they profess to believe God, to believe in God. Because believing in God and knowing God are entirely different things, because there are different resolutions of belief. Sorry about that. You can believe in the idea of a creator and have no idea what his personality and what his attributes are. And that's why there are many gods in the world. There are many religions in the world. There's a lot of ways we can say we know God. And that's why, the dispute over who is God between different religions is not just a matter of labels. It's not just like, well, we call our God Jesus and you call your God Allah and they call their God Yahweh, and really it's all the same God. Well, at some level of resolution it is, because we all obviously have this idea of what God is supposed to be. And we all have this idea that there's only one of them, or at least in certain religions, And so, instead of focusing on all the negativity in this second chapter, he goes on to talk about other qualifications, not just for men now, but for women. So in verse 1 he says, "But speak thou the things which become sound doctrine." And I guess since we've come to the second chapter of this new live stream, I'll mention something I often mention, that the Bible, as it was originally written, did not come with chapters and verse numbers. Any more than when you write a letter, you put in verse numbers, any more than a book normally comes with chapters and verse numbers. But when you have a book that is being referenced by so many people, you need a common point of reference. And that's why chapters and verses were inserted. But Paul isn't thinking, okay, chapter 2, let's drop everything we just talked about and go on. He's still talking about different things in the church, of how Titus should order things, how he should instruct things. He's saying, they profess to know God, but deny him by their works, being abominable and disobedient, and every good work reprobate. And then he says, "But you speak the things which become sound doctrine." What does that mean? Because it's obviously, become here is not the normal use we have in English, is it? But we use it this way sometimes too, like, that does not become you. It's an odd form of expression, I think. I think it almost reminds me of like the old Anglo-Saxon that it probably comes from, because like welcome, the word welcome, that doesn't translate well into, at least we all know what it means, but I always thought it was kind of like an odd way of expressing that idea. If we look at, I want to look at Bible Hub. What's that say about it? And I should share it when I do this. I should share with you, which I can. What I've got here. Okay. Oh. Technical problem. Not half as yesterday was crazy in the morning. But this morning, a little more. Okay, that was great, Paul. Here we go. I guess sharing makes no sense because you can't see what I see, but as my mouse hovers over become pepo, to be fitting, proper, or suitable. Okay, that's what it means. It means to be, it's not, speak the things. I gotta take advantage. Here's what I should do when I have to clear my throat or something. I believe I can mute it. I can go like this. And then we are fine. Okay, so speak thou the things which become sound doctrine. Sorry about my horrible I'm being my own engineer and not being very good at it. Okay. I don't need to do that every time. That's ridiculous. Okay. So we want to speak things that are suitable to sound doctrine. Sound doctrine is going to be, it's going to be good doctrine, right? Yeah, healthy. I like that. Healthy doctrine. And in doctrine is the stuff, basically the information, the instruction, the things we are instructed to do. Healthy instructions. It means instructions that are good for you spiritually, that get you somewhere, that cause you to prosper in the things of God. We, as a teacher, Titus is enjoined to speak things which promote Christian health, so to speak, in the spirit. That's assumed underneath the surface here. He's not talking about, watching what you eat, though that can come into it. That's what, I think that's what part of the problem with churches is that the things they're talking about, I don't go to church a lot as far as to the organized thing people call church. I have fellowship with other believers. I have not forsaken the assembling of ourselves together. As far as what it says in Hebrews, they say that's what the church people always will say. They say, you should not forsake the assembling of ourselves together. Well, I'm not a hermit. It's not like I'm an island to myself. Like I don't have other believers around me. I'm surrounded by other believers. So, in fact, those are the people I choose to surround myself with. I don't choose to surround myself with the ungodly and unbelieving. I choose to surround myself with believing people and have fellowship with them. So, I don't spend a lot of time in lecture halls because that's what they are. They're essentially a lecture hall. You go there, you sit down, you sing together. And I know sometimes that's hard to do at home. I happen to be a musician, so, but the singing is not like a necessary part. You can listen to the radio and you're listening to music with hundreds of other people who are listening to the same station, who are loving it. But obviously it feels good to be with other people. Well, I went into this church and they say, what's the subject? It's unwrapping sex. And it's all about how great it is to be married and how, like when you're married, you can do that and it's not a sin. I thought to myself, I'm like, I wonder how this thing, this is just the perfect thing to dangle in front of all the single people here and of course, the children. I mean, kids need to learn about that. You got to talk to your kids about sex, but it just didn't seem to me like healthy doctrine for prospering. I mean, people are going to, the world, last I checked, there's still babies being born, and there's not much of a problem with people making the decision to go ahead and use their Christian liberty and engage in that behavior. You don't need to preach on it. It was a week to week to week. They had I was in the middle of it. I walked in and they're in the middle of this, series. coming once a week just to hear something like, I mean, I've done weekly Bible studies, you know, more or less regularly over time. And the last thing I would want to do is clog that limited time up with something so, I don't know, mundane, profane. It's pretty profane. So let's talk about things that become sound doctrine. And you say, well, Paul, what is that? Well, that's what I do. That's what I try to do. So if you're not sure what that is, I will endeavor to be a good example of that. And here are some examples immediately in verse 2. That the aged men be sober, grave, temperate, sound in the faith, in charity, in patience. So for the aged men, now they're not officially elders in the church, but they've just got years. Maybe you've been disqualified from the idea of being an elder, right? You know, I don't mean to suggest in all my talk that like I think myself that I put myself like I am Elder Paul. I don't really think in those terms of titles and stuff, since they were made up in the early days of the church, in the early parts of Acts, in order to deal with very specific problems they were having in the church. And since they were creating these positions of power where the people, they would take up collections for widows and stuff, and so, you know, what kind of people do you put in charge of your collections? Who do you put in charge of the money bag? Judas? Well, Jesus put Judas in charge of the money bag, but that was part of, you know, there must needs be traitors, there must needs be false prophets. There's corruption that's going to come along, but what our job is to fight against it and to recognize it and to try to counteract it with godly behavior and sound doctrine. So when he says sober means it means sober, which can be both. You know, sober is, we think of it in terms of alcohol, because alcohol creates a state that is not sober, right? But the idea of sobriety transcends just limitation to, it's the opposite of being drunk. You can be sober without reference to that. Meaning you're not always, and you can have, what I mean is you can lack sobriety. Like right now, you can be not sober. You're not drunk, but you're just not you having clarity of mind and precision of purpose. I'll say, and seriousness, but being silly, and I've been in my life in sort of goofy moods. Maybe you get something exciting happens, like I'm trying to pick things that'll be more common to other people. All right, you get something unexpectedly good happens, right? Or you were hoping for something good to happen, and it happens. And what happens? You can get a little giddy, without any reference to alcohol. You can just get giddy and kind of you lose your mind a little bit. I certainly have. And some people are like that all the time. They're just kind of giddy and giggly and not really sober. They're light and trite, and everything they talk about is just nothingness. There's no sober-minded, like, look at this is serious. You only have one life, and you're not going to be here forever. You're going to be dead, and so what kind of person should you be? What kind of life should you lead? There's no and so sobriety is recognizing, what happens when you drink alcohol, and it can happen without drinking alcohol. You lose your inhibitions. You have poor judgment, right? You don't, like sometimes you don't recognize you're in danger. There are all these things, and sobriety is the opposite of that. It's knowing where you are. It is being acutely aware of your situation. It's seeing life with the proper gravity and taking it seriously to the degree that you can talk about things that become sound doctrine. You can give good advice. to those who are in need of good advice. You can judge things in situations because your mind is grounded in reality and in the Word of God. So, that's sober is not just like, well, I don't drink, so I'm sober. That's fine. But you can totally never touch alcohol and have a completely insober mentality. Grave means reverend or venerable. Don't you love it when they define words with words that are somewhat difficult to define? I mean, I know what they mean, but a lot of times it's hard. You can use a word in a sentence, like, as he bowed before the altar, he exuded a certain amount of reverence, or he was reverend. And our friend who has been an important, our venerable friend who has been a serious and thoughtful colleague for years, someone who is worthy of respect is venerable. Reverend is that which becomes religious, the proper attitude one comes at some serious religious or ritualistic thing. You have to come in with, like, I respect this. This is important. I don't walk into the church like some sort of barbarian, acting like none of this stuff. Like, this is like I'm walking into the grocery store, into some profane place. Specifically, though, according to the Strong's definition, it means serious. And that makes sense that in each of those situations it requires a certain amount of seriousness. And that ties in well with sober. So grave has a sense of seriousness. And it's interesting that it is tied. The word is also the word we have for the place where you bury someone, in a grave. And to be grave is to carry with that, life is serious. This is life and death. We could just spend our lives running around on vacations. We could spend our lives, earning money so we can get to go to the amusement park and partying on the weekends and going out and dancing with our friends. And in and of themselves, none of the, those things are not necessarily evil. I love to dance with my wife whenever I get a chance. And David danced in the Lord's sight before the ark when it was brought into the city, and rejoiced. And I don't think there's anything wrong with dancing around in church. Some people have asked me, but I think it's, it depends on the situation. If it's a light mood and a celebratory mood, dance away. But you don't dance at a funeral, except in extraordinary circumstances. I mean, I always think there's exceptions for all the things. Sometimes it's appropriate to shock people out of their complacency, like when the Lord Jesus came into and he threw the money changers out of the temple. He wasn't showing respect for that, because he saw that as being disrespectful of God. So there are times when you can shatter that reverent, solemn, serious thing when when called upon by God. Let's just say it that way. Temperate, again, of sound mind, self-controlled. We want to be able to not be tossed to and fro by our passions. We want to be, rational and in control. We have to realize that the human mind and we're not inclined to be rational. We're inclined to be moved by the passions that are within us. When it comes to things like especially in decisions about consumption, people are very irrational. Decisions about life and even faith are often very irrational. So, but we want to, though I talk about it, it's like I don't think it's all rational. But we can't just be tossed by passions. There's a place for I believe in passion so very much. I do, because I think you're going to waste a lot of time trying to reason everything out, because God knows I can do that. I could, like I said, I could just take one verse. I could have taken that first verse if it wasn't like the feeling like I got to move on so we can have a nice study that's full of things instead of just one thing and we don't make any progress. But I could take that verse and I could have turned it into 1 hour. It would have involved a lot of digression, but it would all hovered around the same subject, speaking the things which become sound doctrine. Temperate, self-controlled, sound in the faith. I believe sound is probably going to be the same word as before. Let's see. Sound. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's the same word. Hogiaino. Hogiaino? Sound doctrine, sound in faith. And if you have sound doctrine, you will be sound in the faith. Because faith means persuasion. It means the things you are persuaded are true. And what we believe is true is come from, we are taught certain things. And by believing them, that becomes our faith. So that's why doctrine is very important. In fact, when I believe on my doctrine page on my website, and I'll put up the card for the website in a little bit, I talk about the importance of sound doctrine. And I haven't read that in a long time, and I wonder if I would like to edit it. But I always say I wrote things more, I was more rash when I was young. But when I listen to my old studies, all I think is, I wouldn't say it just that way now. But I don't think I disagree with that person. You know what I mean? Except on a few things which I have publicly corrected. Like the things I used to think about the Trinity. I definitely publicly corrected that. In charity and patience. Charity, we think of it like, giving to the poor. And that's one way you can exhibit charity. But charity really means love. It is agape, I think. Yep. And it means love or goodwill. It means benevolent love, not necessarily the love of passion, the love of a man between and a woman, or the love of a mother for her child. Well, that could get close to it. But it means it's love that is, it's like the love of God towards us. It is, we have the sort of benevolent seeking. Did I say benevolent? And there's another word that's like, but bene means, in the language, whichever that comes from, it probably comes from Latin or something. It means good, evolent. I don't know what evolent, like what that root word is, honestly. But it means being well intentioned towards someone, right? It is, and goodwill is definitely a great translation of it. It is, and so that manifests itself oftentimes in, feeding the poor, taking care of the widows. But it can also just in teaching sound doctrine is a form of benevolence, or taking the time to instruct someone who maybe is a little slow, or I hate saying stuff like that, but some people need help. People who are good at teaching should teach others. They should help them understand. I mean, I think that's part of what the problem is with the church these days, is that Christians aren't being equipped. The teachers are not doing their jobs. But they're doing some sort of job. Maybe, and many of them are. I can't go around judging all of them, but I do judge based on what people say, that many places, there's a lot of problems in a lot of churches, but you gotta understand, it's not like these days everything is horrible. I mean, it's been worse in the past. It was probably better in the past. But from the time of Jesus, I mean, look at the book of Revelation, the 7 churches. 5 out of 7 sound like really messed up, very dysfunctional churches. Now, I said the fact that Jesus calls them churches means that I have to consider even the most dysfunctional church in my neighborhood to be a church. Because it's not up to me to, if the Lord says, okay, you claim to be a church, then I'm going to judge you like a church. Then I do too. I judge the works of the church. I judge the fruit, what is coming out of it. But the idea that Jesus definitely puts forward is like repent. And the things he says, the rebukes he delivers against people are intended to help them change. We're not here to condemn, but to help turn. And if they, I realize that I'm gesturing off screen, but like by rebuking, we give people the opportunity to change, or that should be the spirit, not the spirit of condemnation, but the spirit of goodwill. And that's the final thing it says here of the aged men, is that they should have patience. Patience is one of the most difficult qualities to obtain. But if you're going to be charitable, you need patience. If you're going to be, if you're going to be grave in the midst of nuts, in the midst of people losing their minds over things, and in the world there are people that they're going to go crazy. They're going to make a big stink about little things. There's going to be all kinds of conflicts in which you're going to find yourself. And the best way to acquit yourself, when I say acquit, I mean to get yourself off without being accused of yourself of some wrongdoing, is to be patient with people. And patient, it's the most useful of all the things I've learned of God that were not instantly imparted to me through an act of faith. Patience has been one of the most useful things. And I'm not saying I have the patience of Christ or of the Lord, but I definitely know that I do think I'm a patient man. And by that I mean someone who's characterized more by patience than impatience. And that has not always been the case. And I certainly do get impatient at times. Oh yes, I get impatient. But I do find that oftentimes when my patience is tried, I'm very glad just to have it, because I know that it's much more peaceful to be patient and at peace when the temptation is just to be impatient, because it's such a nasty feeling to be impatient, to be sort of like about things. Now, it can't. Sometimes it just can't be. So now let's turn to the ladies. The aged women likewise, that they... we'll continue. Because, later maybe there'll be... Someday there might be tons of questions, but right now I know there's going to be just maybe a couple. So I'm going to continue here a little bit. And if... just before I continue, I guess, because we are at 27 minutes, and that's nearly the halfway mark, and if I open up a new verse, that could be, whatever. It's just a problem. So let's look at the promotional card. You can find more study songs and more. Or you can find additional studies, songs and more. You can visit oraclesofgod.org, and I don't have to spell it because you can see it right there on the screen. And I have a YouTube page, a personal YouTube page, where I will exhibit and do exhibit music, and there are a few other studies there which I'm not going to be posting here because this channel is for the live stream. I'm going to have a single kind of content here. It's just going to be the live stream. We'll talk about single subject studies. We'll talk about even though it's line by line Bible studies, we will sometimes just talk about subjects. Of course, they're going to be related to sound doctrine, but they may not be strictly line by line studies. Okay. And should you have any questions, you can send your questions to questions@oraclesofgod.org. That's a special email address I made just for questions that I will read here. But of course, if you're watching the live stream, in the chat box to the right of the live stream, you can post any question. You can ask questions not related to the study, but you can also ask questions about what I've been studying. And if there are no questions, I'm just going to continue in the chapter till the end of the hour, at which time I will regretfully stop teaching the Bible and start going to work. And that's what we will do. Okay, let me just check the questions real quick, see if I got anything up there. Oh, we have a question. Well, let's see what the question is. And I still, the software is... Did that do anything? And the questions are supposed to be on the other side. And maybe this is unnecessary because you all can see, or I think you can see, the chat pop out. I'll just go to full screen mode. And I'll read it right out of the chat pop out from YouTube. And Katie asks, what did you mean when you said Christ or the Lord? Oh, well, I meant as Christ himself. Yeah, because I said Jesus Christ or the Lord. Sure. I meant that. I meant the Father. As the Son of God or the Father. I meant as God himself. Of course, I believe Jesus is God, and he is fully divine. But he is not the only person I'm dealing with. Christ, when I say Christ, I'm thinking of Jesus, the man who walked the earth. He was a human being like me, all right? And so, on some level, I could aspire to be like that man. And so when I refer to that, I refer to Christ in the flesh as a man. I haven't been as patient as him, or I am not yet in possession of such patience as he possessed. And when I say, or the Lord, I refer, though often Jesus is referred to as the Lord, and that I was referring to the Father as Jesus would refer to the Father. You know, so I don't know, you know, that, and you can refer to Jesus like that too, as far as I'm concerned, not as a man, but as God from everlasting to everlasting. So that's not Jesus born in the manger, but also what he always has been. He has always been God from everlasting to everlasting. And I certainly can't compare myself to the patience, or my patience to the patience that God himself possesses. That's what I meant. Yeah, I guess that could be confusing. Let's go back to the ladies here, the elder women, the aged women. I don't know if that's a distinct... Let's see if, just because it once or twice occurred to me. Elders is presbytos from the previous chapter. Aged men. This is presbytes, which is very similar. So, you know, I don't know if that technical distinction makes a difference. So they chose to translate it differently. They want to set it off a bit. Because at some point, you are an elder whether you qualify or not, in a sense. I mean, not an official elder, but you are an older man. And maybe that's why I thought this is trying to be distinct from elders in chapter 1. So the aged women likewise, that they be in behaviour as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children. Now we gotta go one verse at a time. So let's see. They should be in behavior as becometh holiness. There's nothing quite so... I mean, sometimes it's a bit amusing. A profane old woman. And they're profane. You know, they've aged, but they still carry this sort of profane feel to them. Not holy. You know, and because it's the cliche of, you know, the sweet little old lady, right? And that's how little old ladies ought to become. If they're at least in Christian, as a Christian, we want to be in the mold of being holy, not profane. And the opposite, I do take holy. And when I say profane, I like that word. It means, you know, far from the fane, which is the holy place in Latin or whatever. Yeah, I believe that's Latin. It means not part of the religious structure. Yeah, I mean, that which is in the religious structure, the things of the temple are the holy things. Yeah, I mean, the things that are not, you know, like, let me borrow that curtain there, because we're out of toilet paper in the bathroom. You know, you don't do that with holy things, right? You don't give that which is holy to the dogs, as it is said, even if it's of no further use. A lot of times the holy things when they were finished being used, they had to be burned. It's like we do with our flag. At least you're supposed to do with the flag. When the flag becomes tattered and torn, you're supposed to retire the flag, and that's through incineration. And the funny thing is, I think it's funny, like, people fly their flags out in front of their house in all weather, and if you do this, I'm sorry for picking on you, but you know, the rules are you're supposed to light it. If it's out at night, you're supposed to light it. You're not supposed to fly it in the rain like that, as far as I recall. You know, I mean, and I know they mean no disrespect to the flag, but it's sort of like, you know, we shouldn't be, if we're going to make displays of patriotism, it's good not to be lazy about it, you know. It's, you know, to show respect. If you want to show respect, if you want to show respect, you should do it properly. I mean, it's always a little, you know, if I want to show someone respect and I choose some way that makes them uncomfortable and feel like, you know, it's always inappropriate, you know, and I render myself kind of this annoying, ignorant person who, you know, is stepping on people's toes while I'm trying to show respect. So, aged women need to, in their behavior, and this could go for men, but this is all good advice for Christians. Behavior that is suitable to holiness. You know, like, one of the things I don't like about church is that we put on special. I mean, it's good to have special things, right? And please don't take this as like, this is what I think everyone should do, because the Apostle Paul says one man honors one day above another, another man honors every day alike. And so I'm more of the mind of honoring every day alike. And I'm more of the mind to bring holiness into my everyday life. Okay? And that doesn't mean I have perfect holiness. You could say, well, you kind of water it down. Because if you go to church on Sunday, it's a very special time. You dress up in very special clothes. You know, you walk in there, there's a special kind of ambiance, a feeling of that this is a serious matter. This is a special time. We're coming together as people to worship God. I mean, I've been in churches where I've had good experiences. I often talk about my bad experiences. I've had many good experiences in church also, even in places where you might not think. I remember I was at a funeral, Roman Catholic funeral, and I was really just taking in the ambiance of the church and of the funeral service, and I found it moving. Okay, but you know, yeah. But so we want our behavior, but we want I want my everyday behavior to be Christian, not just my Sunday behavior. And you can still go to Sunday and then walk out without becoming just this profane hypocrite. I mean, it's not like you have to quit going to church on Sunday in order to live out your Christian life day to day. But you know, but you can also skip out on those things and try to live your life in a holy way every single day. And so our everyday behavior needs to become holiness. We shouldn't just be profane and yeah, shouldn't be unholy in our everyday lives. Not false accusers. It is very you know, women, according to scientific studies, men are more interested in things, women are more interested in people. That's not all men, all women or anything, but just a general rule of thumb. In the median interests, they're just a bit more interested in people. And that's why when we talk about women, we talk about things about like gossip and stuff like that, because men can gossip, but for women it's a bigger problem. That's why when we talk about lust, we talk about men, because it's not that women can't be lustful or sinful in sexual things. It's just that it's a bigger problem for men. And false accusations is definitely a bigger problem for women. And I don't care. You know, people will say, "Oh, those are sexist." It's like, well, stop being sexist against me. It's all a bunch of garbage. There are differences between the sexes. If you don't understand that, then you're not paying attention. You know, and I don't know what to tell people. It's like, I think they're trying to impose this insane ideology of absolute similarity. Everyone's just exactly the same. I know that I'm very atypical of men. You know, I'm not like a lot of guys. I know I have a lot of atypical qualities that are not the same. And it's not either male or female as far as I know. It just is what it is. But certainly within groups, there's variation between groups. That's why stereotypes develop, because they're exaggerations of those observed differences. Because they're real. They're not like absolutes. Like I said, the Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, slow bellies. It's a stereotype about the Cretans, and it's true. It doesn't mean it's like absolutely true in every case. What it's saying is like, yeah, they have problems with those things. You know, and okay, so not false. So in false accusers, okay, let's just, without talking about the battle of the sexes, we can just soberly look at the things that we struggle with. You know what I mean? It's like false accusers, yeah, in their gossip, and they're talking about other people. There's a tendency that can be false accusations. If that's not you, then you shouldn't take it personally. I mean, there's a lot of things it says about men that I don't take personally because it's not a problem for me. Not giving him much wine. I wonder if that much is really in there. I always have to, like, because it's, you don't want to emphasize something and then find out, oh, in the Greek it doesn't exist. And it's like, so it's not much wine. This is a good example of, what is the good example of our liberty, because Paul does say to Timothy, take a little wine for your stomach's sake and for your oft infirmities, because it could be used like medicine in moderation. Yeah, there's definitely the word poulos, which is much in Greek, is a separate word there. So, because a little wine, to help relax at certain times, is acceptable. And I know some people are alcoholics, and there's no such thing as a little. A little always turns into a lot, and pretty soon they're just drunk all day, and they can't touch the stuff. And I understand. So some man believes he can eat all things. Another man is weak and can only eat herbs. And what we are told is that the weak are not supposed to judge the strong, and the strong are not supposed to despise the weak. It means just because you can take a little glass of wine, don't despise someone who has to totally abstain. And the person who has to totally abstain, don't think that rule that applies to you applies to everybody. Not given too much wine. How does this... Because there are people who believe that under no circumstances should anyone ever taste any alcoholic beverage, or let's say this is grape juice. Well, if it's grape juice, why would not given too much grape juice? Don't drink too much of the sweet stuff. I mean, I can make a case for that. Yeah, sugary beverages aren't healthy. Do you really think that's what Paul was thinking? This is a verse that kind of pulls that apart. Not given too much wine. Because why would it not be either not given to wine, oh, he's talking about alcohol, or take a little wine and then they say he's talking about grape juice. But when it gives an amount in there, that implies some sort of liberty. They're like, well, how much is too much? You better figure that out, because we have to, we have to be in our behavior as becomes holiness, and there's only a little bit of wine in that, enough. I think that it's like this. Like, I drink coffee in the morning. You might have noticed. And you could say, well, you drink that stimulant? I guess I do. This is rather stimulating, and I drink it in the morning. It helps me wake up. That's a substance. You're drugging yourself with I can say, like, well, what are you doing there? You're eating food? You're taking nourishment? I suppose you like the way that gives you energy. The way that makes you feel like you're ready to do work and to have activity. Don't you know that those carbohydrates are, that energy it's giving you is, it's changing your physical chemistry? I mean, so a little wine achieves the effect. A little coffee, I'll tell you, I drink it, but I don't want to drink it till I feel like this, and you don't want to drink wine till till you achieve the minimal desired effect. No, I'll just say that. And it's a matter of conscience for each person. Depends on, just a little to help me not go to sleep, a little to help me relax in the afternoon. I'm not saying me, but I'm just saying whoever you are, whatever your number is, whatever your limit is, keep it within the bounds of propriety. Teachers of good things. We don't want to be staggering all over the place and unable to think. That's the thing. When you start losing your mind and acting like a fool, you've definitely gone too far. Teachers of good things. That's something. Look at. Can a woman teach? Is it? I suffer not a woman to teach. And then he says, tell the aged women to be teachers of good things. And I feel great about that because that justifies everything I've always said about women teaching. It's not that women can't teach. That's just, they don't understand what Paul was talking about. Because he was talking about, it's like, he didn't want to cause scandal. The society he lived in, women, Paul taught that in Christ there was neither male nor female. He totally leveled the playing field as far as our worth before God. He said a woman is worth everything that a man is worth. And a poor man is worth everything that a rich man is worth. And everyone in the sight of God is equal, at least as far as we're equally sinners. But, in the faith, he is equal in his love towards us. There are varying rewards and stuff. I don't know to say it's equal in love. I don't know. Let me just put it this way: that being a woman doesn't render you a second-class Christian. And he exhorts them to be teachers of good things. And I just, teachers of good things. A teacher, yep. It's one big word that I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce, but it means a teacher of good things. I'm going to just poke in at the questions just because time's winding down. We got 15 more minutes, and we have another question. Katie asks, you mentioned the churches in Revelation and how two are approved by God. Do you think these two are gathered together in one place? I actually said 5 out of 7. I mostly mentioned the churches that were not. Well, yeah. I think if I understand your question, that like the two, like Smyrna and Philadelphia, you don't mean the two are one church. You mean that each of those churches is like a normal church. I think so, because they would be, it would make sense that they would be traditional, because you understand that in the time of Jesus, like, there was no internet, there was no, if you wanted to hear preaching, you had to go and get it. Now, you could, like, there were many places where it's like the church in your house. Like when Peter went to Cornelius, Cornelius was saved in all his house. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a formal church, but the church is the body of believers, and it's a localized thing. But I think in our time, it can be, a church can be something much, there is the church writ large, like the many-membered body of Christ. He has one church, ultimately, right? The real church is this mystical union that the Spirit brings about of all believers everywhere. He brings in, there's just really one church. It is Christ's body. There's not 7 churches. There's not, but, so in a sense, but the question, as I understand, is like, is this church gathered in one place, like as a localized body? And as far as like I look at it as the example he was using was churches that existed in his time. I always believe that the churches in Revelation were churches that, like, when that was written, that was true of those places. because those are literal, the names of places in Asia Minor. All the, Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, Thyatira. They were all localized. So when it was written, he certainly was referring to actual local bodies. And but as far as in my interpretation of Revelation, though, I just see it as unacceptable, corpuses, I guess, groupings of people. I just feel like I like to use the word that just catches it all. Unacceptable bodies versus acceptable ones, meaning local bodies. But you don't have to be part of a local body to be part of the big body. That I certainly believe. And even if you're not technically part of a local body, you can be part of a local body in that there are Christians in your locality, or you might be joined through something like the internet, though I would not consider my study to be any kind of church. I've always encouraged people, if you feel like you need fellowship, don't think you're getting it from me, because fellowship is a two-way street. It's not just like me talking at you. This isn't fellowship. You may feel edified by it, and you will be exhorted. You will be, what's the word I want? You'll be encouraged. There's all kinds of benefits you can get from listening to a teacher or a preacher or a evangelist. But it's not the same as just sitting with another believer and talking. As far as, but the thing is that I do think that even the bad churches in Revelation from the first century probably are better than many churches we have today. As far as, in a sense, that it would not have been so, the word that comes to my mind is calcified, made into this solid, kind of immutable structure of because church is you go in and there's a lecture hall and the guy talks for a while, they're singing, and then you're dismissed. And you walk out as empty as you felt when you came in. Maybe the message lifted you up a bit, but you haven't really had fellowship with believers, unless it's Potluck Sunday, in which case you get a chance to go down and listen to people talk about subjects that have nothing to do with Christianity, unfortunately. Because fellowship is not just okay, we're both Christians, but the best part is we both love the Packers, or the Bears, or whatever. I'm actually not a sports fan, all right? My favorite sports are the ones that my children play. That's it. I used to be a sports fan, though. But I have no time for that kind of recreation. But let's say we go down church, it's Potluck Sunday, and I say to you, hey, did you watch the game? And you say to me, yeah, it wasn't that great. And we just blah, blah, blah about the game. And here we are gathered together on our holy day, our big opportunity to take fellowship and not forsake the gathering together of ourselves. And somehow it's not edifying us. Somehow it's not building us up. We just heard a significant message. Some preacher got up. He might have been preparing all week, or at least the night before, right? He might have been whatever. He might have just this morning had the inspiration, but we pray, we hope that God inspired him to deliver a message that was full of meaning, depth, and that really took hold of us spiritually and gave us this recharge that's going to take us through the rest of the week, and we are going to live our Christian lives with greater zeal and attention and sobriety and all those things, right? That's what it's going to do for us. But we walk away 5 minutes from it, we're downstairs stuffing our faces with food, and all we can think about is the game that's going to be on at 2 o'clock. And so the local assembly is overrated, at least in its current configuration, in my opinion, unless you've got a real stellar place, in which case you're very blessed. So yeah, you can't get away from the fact that Jesus was talking about churches that were in physical locations. Can we be, I never think am I part of Philadelphia? I just want to be in a place that's like Philadelphia. I just want the Lord to regard me as that. Well, like I remember when he talks about Sardis, he says, you have a few names, even in Sardis, which have not defiled their garments, they shall walk with me in white. So you have this corrupt church, and in the midst of this corrupt church, you have names. I'm more concerned about my name. Rejoice not that the devils are subject to you, but that your names are written in heaven. I want my name, if my name is written in heaven, that's better than having the fact that I attend a church that's written in the book of Revelation. Because I tell you what, you could be in the church of Smyrna or Philadelphia, like this, a church that is the spiritual equivalent of Smyrna and Philadelphia. You're in that church, and you could be one of the names that it gets purged from the rolls. You know what I mean? Where you are physically is not going to determine your destiny. Just because most people there and the organization itself is on the right path doesn't mean that you are. Because even there were false prophets among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you. 2 Peter chapter 2, the first verse. There were false prophets among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you. Even in the best places, you're going to have false prophets, teachers coming in to test, to pull off the people who are supposed to fall away. So there is no ideal location to be, because just because we're in a location doesn't mean that we're right. And just we could be part of a bad church trying to reform it. And it doesn't mean we're going to go down with the sinking ship. So let's see. We're close to the end here. There's no reason okay, that's good. We don't have an additional question. She'll just say thanks. Katie, who has been thanking me for Bible studies for 24 years. And the first person to ever thank me for teaching anything. What would I do without Katie? Teachers of good things. Let's see. We got okay. Well, the next verse, it says that they may teach young women things. And I don't want to get into the young women as a new subject. So we're going to wrap this up. I don't want to stop early, but that's okay. We can just remind you of a few things. First of all, if you have a question, it doesn't have to be related to Titus. It could be related to any biblical subject, and you'd like me to address it in the second half of the program, you can send your question to questions@oraclesofgod.org. I did check that Friday, and I will, right after I get done here, I will quickly check it. So if there's a question tomorrow, I will be sure to address it on the live stream. And of course, I have to make some sort of other card. I don't know. There's more stuff I'm going to do. But I thought the most important thing was just to start the live stream. And so, remember, you can find additional studies, songs, and more at oraclesofgod.org, a website I've had online for over 20 years. Originally, I made it to promote my music, but you can find all kinds of Bible studies there. Hundreds of hours. You can load up your phone or your music player, and you will have there will be a long time before you run out of stuff. I got people who say they love what I do, and they have never listened to everything. And not that everything is so great and worth listening to, but there's also written studies on that page, or written documents about things. I also have a basic statement of faith, I guess, for people who are interested in that. It's funny, as the sun rises, it get this weird. I feel like I'm a cyborg or something. Anyways, this is Line by Line Bible Studies. My name is Paul Strangini. It's great studying with you every day, and I look forward to studying with you again tomorrow. I used to say very, very soon, but very soon tomorrow. Thanks.